definitely good. Alright, so kind of the checklist. So the 2015 STI Steering Rack is in. Subframe is cut. Special bolts are in. And you can see the clip I showed you before. The inner tie rods and outer tie rods are both cut and cut to the length that I need to be, and I'll be able to fit the car. So it was 3/4 of an inch, so 75% of an inch, 3/4 of an inch off the inner tie rods and 1/2 inch off the outer tie rods. So that's pretty much done. Steering linkage is connected. So the next thing we're going to be doing is going to be targeting the power steering lines. So this is the feed line right here. The feed line, I'm converting it to a fully stainless steel 6AN feed line. And then the return line, I'm keeping the OEM style. So this is the return line right here. So I'm keeping this that goes to the reservoir. And then the next hose from the reservoir goes down here. And then that hose is going to be converted to AN fittings from the rack and fitting adapters to the hose. And let me show you one of those fittings right now. To go from the rack to the hose, we're going to have some adapters. So we have this adapter here, and then we have this barb adapter, which of course you could see how the hose would slip over this. So it's going to go from here to the rack, and then to this, and then to the hose. So that's the return line, and then the feed line is going to be this Frogla stainless steel power steering line with the, I'll have the description in the bottom. So this one. We're also going to have a steel power steering adapter, and that's going to go onto the pump to connect to the AN line. And then we have various other adapters that we'll go into later, right? So that's what we're going to be doing next. Let's go ahead and take off the OEM feed line, and that's what we're going to be doing next. Alexa, pause. All right, so we're going to take out the feed line. So the feed line is that with the banjo bolt on top of the power steering pump. When you follow that line, let's look at what bolts we're going to need to take out. So it looks like we're going to just have to unbolt the expansion tank to get to these. It's going to pop off of this bracket. There's a bracket there. There's another bracket right there. And then we follow the line. It's actually the only brackets up here. And then you'll see one down there. You'll see that 10mm one right there that connects the return hose to the feed hose. Now that we just took out both of the power steering lines, I took out the feed and the return. I didn't film the return. I didn't think I was going to take out the return, but once I turned off the camera and kind of was playing with things, I came up with a solution that I want to do now. So what I have here is going to be the power steering feed line. Make sure you get a line that's good for the power steering, for the PSI that the power steering feed puts out. It is pretty high. So this is specifically a Frogla power steering, stainless steel power steering line. 6AN with a 90° on this side, which will be from the pump, and then this will be to the rack. So to go in the order, so make sure you get one of these, and I'm going to link all the links down in the description and label the parts. So this is going to go, this with the, you see the O-ring, that part is going to screw into the power steering pump. Then we're gonna have the 90-degree go into that. This line's gonna go all the way down to the rack. And then this is the aluminum adapter that's gonna go from the rack fitting that's gonna attach to that, right? And that's the power steering feed line. That's it, easy. It's gonna be a lot cleaner. I took out all those hard lines, took out all those brackets. It's gonna be a nice, clean, one stainless steel line. Done. And then for the return, what I'm gonna be doing is I took out make sure you always have the heat protector with this hose, because it's near the turbo and the up pipe and it gets really hot over there, so you really do not want a hose bursting with power steering fluid. It's very dangerous and it can become flammable. So the OEM one has the heat jacket. Make sure you reuse that. I just took that out because I might have to cut a little bit off this because the way I'm going to reroute the line might be a little bit too long, but I want it to look a little bit cleaner, and I'm going to slightly tuck it. So what I'm going to be doing, so you're going to need so this is the OEM hose. This end is the end that goes towards, that was heat covered by the up pipe and the turbo. That went down to the rack. And then this went up towards the fuel rail, and that's where all the brackets were. And then it attached to the S-type, the S-curved return hose that goes to the reservoir. So what I'm going to do is actually, that hose was really brittle, so I didn't even want to mess with it. So I just cut it up to take it out, and then I got brand new power steering, specifically power steering return lines. Just make sure you really get the hoses. Make sure they're very specific, because these fluids are hot, pressurized, and power steering is usually actually hydraulic grade hoses. And then, so what we're going to be doing for the return, so I'll kind of walk you through it. So just imagine the reservoir. So the reservoir, I'm going to run you through it too, but this is just kind of like the dry run. So it goes to the reservoir, this hose, then it's going to attach to this end, and this end's going to go right. I have the bracket where I'm going to attach it to the frame, and then this is going to go down into the rack. And then when you get to the rack is going to go this to the rack, then it's going to go this on top, then it's going to go another, and then this one on top. And then that will attach to this, and then it'll go into there and you clamp it down. All right, that's pretty much easy. That's pretty easy. Remember, they're aluminum fittings, the AN, so don't go too tight. Just tighten it as much as it needs to be. Don't over torque it. Oh no, I forgot to say. So this fitting, so make sure you get a steel one, not an aluminum one. So from what I researched is that this steel one would make less noise, where the aluminum one might squeal a little bit more when it's attached to the pump. We'll find out. Alright, another update. So you have the fitting that I showed you what I put on, and I'm going to route the stainless steel line down like that. I was looking at it, I was deciding between either going like this way or going over the intake, but actually this 90 degree isn't long enough, so it actually can't screw on because of the intake. So I only had one option. So it's not bad though. The only thing, in all honesty, if it were me, if I were to do it again, I would honestly get this in black. That's just me, because I mean, I guess I might match the intercooler. It's only a silver thing. But anyways, so this is going to be going down here. And then what I did was route it down right there underneath, and it's coming right here. So this one, that's the feed, and this is going to be the return. So this is one fitting, this is one fitting, and then one. So there's 3 fittings right here. And then one feed. Alright, so we're just going to button these up, and then that's it. Alright, so now we see both of these hoses. Again, this is return, this is the feed. So what I'm going to be doing is making a bracket. So you could actually get this when you pull off the power steering. You're going to get a bracket that looks like this. It came off for where the power steering used to be over here. So what I'm going to do with this, is that I'm going to cut it right about there. So then it'll just sit flush. So it'll sit flush, mount to this bolt right there, and then attach to this and hold it in place so it doesn't get too near the up pipe right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and cut this bracket and then do a test fit. We got this bracket right here. We're gonna go ahead and bolt it to this hole right here. Make sure you get a piece of rubber so you can wrap this around the hose. And that's because of vibrations. You don't want the metal bracket to damage the hose. Alright, so I figured out what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna make this bracket. This is gonna hold the feed line, and when I bolt it up right here, that actually makes the line hard enough and it stays away from the up pipe. So that's what I wanted. Right. So you can see the stainless steel line, and that's the bracket holding it down. But right between those hoses, that's the 12mm bolt holding the bracket down. To say so the one thing, it makes it super easy the way I did it to get new lines, because the reason why it's going to be almost impossible to do it if you don't want to do the line, I mean, you pretty much have to do the lines. The reason why is because the lines on the 2015 STI steering rack, they crisscross. So for example, if you use the OEM hard lines, this front one right here is actually the feed, and then the rear one is the drain. So they literally crisscross because the hard lines crisscross underneath here. So when the hard lines come down, there's no way to crisscross them. So you have to do something with the lines. Alright, the power steering lines are all hooked up, so we're going to start putting the car back together. It's done. We're just going to throw in, I'm going to make this quick, probably just do some time lapses of it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put the axle back in. And the axle was taken out so we can get clearance to take out and install the new steering lines to the rack. Now that we're done with that, we can go ahead and install the axle. Then we're going to install the outer tie rods. Then we're going to hook the knuckles back up. This is the only one off because I took out the axle. And then we're going to bleed the power steering system. So pretty excited. We should get some kind of a test drive tonight. All right. And my alignment is tomorrow. So let's get going. Underneath the car, fix the toe as close as possible, but before I do that, before I start, because to tow I'm gonna have to move the steering wheel back and forth, I want to bleed the cooling system. Sorry, I need to bleed the steering rack, the power steering fluid, just so there's fluid in there before I start moving the rack all around. So everything is done. Only thing is that when I was bleeding it, I noticed that the air would not stop coming out from the power steering reservoir. When we were bleeding it, it was non-stop bubbling. And what I found out was that this clip right here on the return hose, that clip, it actually was not clamped. So that's my fault. So that was definitely, since the return is like sucking, the pump is sucking back from the return line, it was sucking in air, and that is why it kept doing air. So that actually will really ruin your power steering pump, especially this is from 2002 WRX, and it's not meant to keep up with this ratio. I didn't drive it hard, I was just driving around the block, but it was super inconsistent. Kept, getting hard, then it'll go soft, and getting hard, then going soft. I just drove it today. It was a little bit more consistent, but I've already just talked to some friends, and they just advised me to just upgrade it to the 2008 plus STI Steering Rack, which is the same one for the 2015. If I'm not mistaken, the part number matches. So to run the 2015 STI Steering Rack, which is brand new right here, right, I'll put the part number for this bottom. You're gonna need a 2004 and plus STI or WRX bracket. So if you already have a 2004 or 2004 WRX or STI, you could reuse the power steering bracket. I had to buy a brand new one to fit on mine, because then mine is a 2002 WRX power steering bracket. Right, so that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to go ahead and drain the fluid. I'm just going to reuse it since it's so brand new. Just going to drain the power steering fluid, put it back into the container, go ahead and start taking out the power steering pump. The first thing what we're going to do is that since it's I'm going to have to unbuckle a few things on the alternator just to make sure. I'm going to go ahead and take off my battery. So this is the battery in my trunk. Remember that I do have a DIY video how I did this, so if you'd like to do it as well, it is there on my channel, and I can link that in the description as well. The fuse breaker, so that's just protection. It's kind of a fail safe, so if anything shorts, this pops so it doesn't go to the battery and something worse happens. Right, and easy, just take off my battery like that. Right, now my battery is disconnected. Let's go ahead and get started on this power steering removal, all right? Here we go. So I wanted to talk about the difference in the brackets and the difference in the pumps, just to highlight some things before I put it in. So the dirty one, so the one on the left, this is the one from the 2002 WRX. So if you have anything below a 2004 WRX or STI bracket, you're going to need to upgrade to that. So this is the 2004 WRX and STI power steering pump bracket. And as you can see, the mounting holes for the pump are completely different, and that's going to be the biggest problem why you have to change it. So these are the three pumps. This is how it's literally going to go onto the block. So you can see these are pretty much vertical, and then these are the mounting points are horizontal on the newer power steering pump. So again, so this is 2004 WRX STI in up brackets. This is a 2008 STI power steering pump, and the difference in the pumps is that we'll bring these next to each other. I mean, one, I don't know the specific specifications on how much, let's say like how much liters they pump out, but definitely the newer ones pump out more and can keep up with the faster rack. So what people say is that with the slower, this is not, I mean, this is only meant to keep up with a 16.5 to 1 ratio rack, whereas this one's able to keep up with a 13 to 1 ratio rack. And as you know, the more heat and the more cycles you're doing on your steering rack, just like brakes or any fluid, once it's getting worked, that fluid is getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So if this is not able to keep up with that fluid, then it gets a little bit too hot, and that's why people have to add power steering coolers or what it may be. So This is just definitely a good upgrade, especially if you're going to the 13:1 ratio. So this is going to be the feed, return, return. All right. So those are the differences, and then we're gonna go ahead and install this now. Okay, let's talk about what bolts you could reuse. So these two bolts are the two bolts that'll actually go through these two top holes and go into the power steering pump. Those will be okay to use. This one is a long one. It's a little too short, so you have to get the newer bolts. This is the one that goes through and through like this. This one's, I think the power steering pump is just a little bit wider, so you just need about this is a M10 by 125, and I believe it's about 100 millimeters long, so you need about 110 millimeter long bolt to go to there. And then since power steering, you get a lot of vibration, what you're going to need is some kind of Loctite. I'm going to use orange Loctite. Orange Loctite has the strength of a high strength Loctite, but you're able to remove it by hand tools. Then that's what they say on the bottle, and that's how they market it. So high strength, but able to remove by hand tools. Right. So we're gonna go ahead and install the pump into the bracket, and then we're gonna do the whole power steering pump bracket into the car, and we're gonna be done. Gonna bleed the cooling system. Again, we're going to bleed the power steering system, and then we are going to be all done with the new power steering pump, and this rack should be finally complete. We're going to go out and take it for the first test drive. Alright. So there's the 112 millimeter through the hole there, another 12 millimeter there, and then the long 14 millimeter in the back. So those are the 3 screws that are going to hold on the power steering pump. Don't forget the pressure sensor wire that you're going to have to transfer from the old power steering pump. And that's the sensor right there. That's the sensor right there. We're gonna plug that in. There's a wire there. Then we got the feed and we got the return. So what we're gonna do with the feed right now is gonna take the feed adapter for my stainless steel line. So this is the adapter. I'm gonna use a new O-ring and then thread it right into here. We'll do that next, and we're gonna start bolting this up to the car. Alright, so we got the 2015, we got the new STI power steering pump in. So we're gonna go ahead and fit that 90-degree angle here. It's a lot tighter with this pump. This is gonna be the return line. So let's go ahead and set that up, and then I'm gonna test fit everything. I'm making a new line with new specific power steering line hoses, and we're going ahead and get started on that. Let's do this. We got the power steering pump fully bolted in now. We have the stainless steel power steering feed line bolted in now. And we also have, I made new brackets for it since it's routed a little differently. So I made that one as well. And then I have the other one that I showed you in the beginning that's behind the intake down there. So there's 2 brackets holding that stainless steel line in place now. And you can see the clearance here. So here it is bolted on the side now. And then it has clearance over the radiator hose, just enough. And I'm going to talk about the return line now. So the return line from the rack to the reservoir is 3/8, and I just found out that the hose from the reservoir to the pump is 5/8. I bought 3/8 for both of them, so I had to return it and get a new one. This actually was cheaper because I got just 2 feet of it cut, and it ended up being like $3.50. So pretty cheap. Again, gonna go from 5/8 from the reservoir to the pump. That's what we're gonna be doing next. After I hook up that line, I'm gonna go ahead and hook up the alternator all the way back, and that's it. We're gonna jack this car up and bleed the system and take it for a test drive. Let's get this started. Alright, so we're bleeding the power steering now. So what we're gonna do is jack up the car. The wheels have to be in the air So you're gonna do this 10 times. So 1 rotation to the left, 1 rotation to the right, that's 1 cycle. Do 10 cycles with the motor off, then we're gonna turn the motor on and do about 10 to 20 cycles. If you could hear it, you'll hear the bubbles out of the power steering. Hopefully.